Hello, everybody, and welcome to the INvest.U podcast, where we are inspiring and equipping you to achieve success in family, work, and life. And before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind you that we are continuing our series on finances because we believe that money and finances affect every aspect of our lives. And so in order to enhance the quality of our family, work, and life, we believe that it's important to understand finances. And if you missed episode number 3, it is live, and it is live. I mean, I couldn't have asked for more sound, straightforward wisdom about how to build a legacy of financial freedom and wealth than we heard from Mr. Josh Gordy. And I'm not going to say anything else about it because I want you to just listen for yourself. But it's an incredible episode, and he gives us some priceless information and priceless just wisdom. And so please check out episode 3. It's available on iTunes, and you can also check it out on our Facebook page at the INvest.U. Also, you can check out the actual video version on YouTube at the INvest.U as well. And also, please tune in to our website, www.theinvestu.com, for information on any upcoming activities, upcoming events, as well as just upcoming podcasts that we have. You can also check out our website for just material, resources, information, book recommendations, articles, videos, all designed to inspire you and also to equip you to achieve success in your family, work, and life. So without further ado, we're going to jump into episode number 4. Again, we're continuing our series on finances, and we have Mr. Bobby Jones Jr. He is the founder and lead advisor at Edwin Yeates Financial Services, and he's going to be talking to us about just some of the basics of the stock market, such as what is a stock, what is a mutual fund, also the 3 freedoms of entrepreneurship, which I found very interesting. You're not going to want to miss that. And he's also sharing just some invaluable wisdom about the balance of family, work, and life. So without further ado, let's jump into episode number 4, Mr. Bobby Jones. Money, 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 money. Okay, I had to get that out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the INvest.U podcast, where we are inspiring and equipping you to achieve success in family, work, and life. We have a guest on our show who is an expert in the field of financial planning and financial management, Mr. Bobby Jones. And I'm going to read a little bit about his bio, and then we're going to get to know him a little bit better. And he's going to give us some excellent expertise on investing in the stock market. So Mr. Jones has a past background in the private club and resort management business, and he also started his own business, the Edwin Yeates Financial Services, in 2014 after obtaining his financial planning designation. And this is the one I really want you all to hear. He is a qualifying member of the $1 Million Roundtable. Now, who wouldn't want to be a part of a $1 Million Roundtable? And so that actually is an industry organization that focuses on promoting excellence and the highest of ethical standards in the financial services industry. And on a personal note, Mr. Jones is from Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, where he grew up, and he graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in business administration and marketing. And he's married. His wife's name is Avery, and they have 2 sons, Thompson and William. And when Bobby's away from the $1 Million Roundtable, he enjoys mountain biking, road biking, fly fishing, and just spending time with his family. And as you all know, this podcast is all about helping you enhance your opportunities and your ability to do just that, to invest in your family, work, and life as you're investing in yourself. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Bobby Jones to the show. How you doing, sir?
Good, thanks. All right, glad to be here.
Well, I've read a little bit about your bio, so just give us a little bit of a background of how you got into the financial services industry and where your career started, and then how you ended up helping people make those millions of dollars.
Sure. After school, I just knew that I was made to sell things. So I knew I had to sell something, and left school and went directly into the golf business on the club side. I've been a golfer since I was 8 years old and knew the game and knew how clubs worked. So I started in the private club business straight out of school. Spent a number of years there in management of clubs on the membership sales side. Left that business for the real estate around clubs, and did that on what's called on-site real estate sales for a number of years through other clubs as well. Just because it was time to leave management. Management was not what I wanted. I was much more of a self-starter and got too deep into the club management side and decided that's not where I wanted to be. After doing that for a number of years, it became apparent in order to continue to move up the ladder and continue to increase your income and the resort real estate business, you had to keep moving. And that's when we had our first son and decided that it was time to kind of put some roots down. We moved, my wife and I moved, I think, 6 times in 8 years with different club positions, and just decided that Asheville, North Carolina is where we wanted to be, and that's where we are.
Okay, great. That sounds great. And so what has it been like actually calling your own shots and owning your own business?
It has its wonderful upsides and its downsides, too.
All right, well, give us some of the ups and downs.
Go ahead.
What are some of those ups and downs?
Yeah, I think the best description of being a business owner, or why we become entrepreneurs, is for freedom of time, freedom of earnings, and the freedom of doing business the way that we want to. And those are really the 3 freedoms of entrepreneurship. However, what people probably don't realize is that freedom of doing business the way you want to means you have to decide how you want to do the business.
That's right.
Sometimes that means changing. Freedom of income doesn't always mean lots of income, especially at the start. So you have the freedom to make as much as you want to, but it still requires the hard work to get there. And the freedom of time is a wonderful thing, although I would say it has some pitfalls in how you think about jobs and how you were raised and how you consider what is required of jobs, meaning kind of that 9-to-5 mentality. I struggled with that for a while, is feeling like if I was not in the office between 9 and 5, then I wasn't quote-unquote successful. So even with freedom of time, sometimes you got to work through your own mental shortcomings to get the true freedom. Okay.
All right. So, talk about how you're able to balance the family work and life demands, being a business owner and having a family.
Yeah, I mean, our kids are now 12 and 8 and are fully involved in sports, so lots of travel and different things. The only way I found to do it is I'm very schedule-oriented and calendar-oriented. So probably about 2-3 years ago, my wife and I sat down, who works in the business as well, by the way. She and I sat down and started calendaring everything in our lives. So anything I need to do with my kids, go to the school for different awards or different programs or things like that, goes on my business calendar, becomes an appointment. And years ago, I figured out how to look at an appointment on my calendar as something that's not changeable. So once it's on there, and I'm going to be on time, and it is considered an appointment for me. So that's the way I do it day to day. It's just appointment in what things I need to do for the family, even down to going to have lunch with the kids or whatever it happens to be.
No, that's great. So because you do, control more of your time, you actually schedule family events on your business calendar, and that becomes an appointment.
I do. It's the only way that I can put them in a position where they'll maintain their integrity.
Wow.
I just know that if something's on my calendar, if there's an appointment on my calendar, it's an appointment. It doesn't matter what it is, whether that's scheduling time to work on someone's financial plan, which I do that as well, rather than just doing it in my free time. I actually schedule it out. Or whether it's going to my child's guitar recital, it's on my calendar, and then that way I know I have to respect it.
Right. That's awesome. And so they're all priority. You prioritize your family as well as your work, and you manage it with your calendar. It sounds like a lot of organization as well.
Family to me always comes first. It's one of the main reasons why I'm an entrepreneur. It gives me the opportunity to, as Stephen Covey says, put the big rocks first, right? If you know that whole If you know that illustration of putting in the big rocks before the little rocks,
Mm-hmm.
before the sand and before the water. If we get those big rocks in place first, which is my family, then everything kind of falls in line around it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, you hear people say all the time, family first, family first, family first. But then you see, if you looked at their life and examined it, I guess you would see them putting the little rocks in first and not prioritizing family with long work schedules and things that are evident they're not really valuing family. But it sounds like, even though I know you're not perfect and don't have it all together, you have at least set up a framework to where you can put your family, prioritize your family in your business and your work.
Yeah, not perfect, bud, ever. I still struggle with the pull of business as well. I mean, being an entrepreneur, I would say one of the other priorities is my business.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a priority in my life, so it does pull quite a lot. It is where we create the money for the family to be able to do the things that we do. So
Right.
We have to focus on that as well.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, by creating that framework, I feel like I can actually keep both of those priorities on my schedule and make sure, I don't make everything for the kids, but I make a lot of them. And
Right.
I think that's important.
Oh, no, I think that's awesome. That's great. Well, let's transition a little bit and talking about how you make that money and how you help other people. And I know when we talk about money, it can be skewed a lot of times, and people can have all types of thoughts about it. And sometimes money and thinking about money is not always the most wholesome thing. And particularly in the financial services business, we know there have been some pretty famous cases of people not valuing integrity. But it sounds like with your involvement in the $1 Million Roundtable, and I want to hear a little bit more about that, but it's not just about millions of dollars, but it's about integrity and it's about excellence. So talk a little bit more about the $1 Million Roundtable.
Sure. It's an organization that's been around for a number of years. I don't remember exactly when it started, but it started as a group of individuals more in the insurance industry. So I'm not as involved in it as I have been in the past, but it was an invitation-only type meeting of the minds, if you will, of high-performing insurance agents, insurance-type planners, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I qualified multiple years to be invited to the $1 Million Roundtable and have attended. It's a huge meeting. It's about 7,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Now. So it's a large organization across the entire world. And it is built around sharing of ideas. It's built around professionals sharpening the saw with other professionals. Again, another Franklin Covey reference there. Sitting down and sharing ideas that we can all be better for our clients. I really enjoyed my time there. I learned a whole lot. Mostly today I've been more involved in the Financial Planning Association, which is the FPA, which is more focused on the advice side of our business, which has been more of what I do now. I started off more on the insurance and financial product side and have moved more over to the advice side. But $1 Million Roundtable is a fantastic organization.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So when you say the advice side, talk a little bit more about what you mean by advice.
Sure. In the world of finances, there are multiple different advisors, if you will. And it's really hard to figure out who does what because the titles are not very well delineated. So when you say you're a financial planner, that could mean a whole lot of things. And I kind of look at people in three different categories in our business. People like me, advisors like me. You're either a product-type advisor, which you usually find attached to the insurance companies or maybe some of the big brokerage houses, where your main form of payment comes from commissions earned when someone buys a product from you. And so you tend to be very focused on specific products, life insurance, annuities, mutual funds, specifically selling mutual funds. Then there is a group where I fall, which is kind of in the middle, which does some products, but primarily they get paid to advise you in how to invest your money. So maybe they do fee-based financial plans where you pay someone a flat fee to create a plan for you, which I do regularly, and then help you implement that plan. And then the third level is what's called a fee-only advisor. They do no commissions whatsoever. They do no product whatsoever. They just advise you around financial topics for a fee. And those are kind of the three levels. And each one of them has its positives and negatives, Jeremiah, and we could debate that all day. But it's important that everyone understand kind of that there are those three pieces of the puzzle and understand what they want from their advisor so they know which one to choose.
Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to specifically choose an advisor a little bit later in the show. But right now, I just want to get into the nuts and bolts of the stock market. Before I started, personally investing, I was afraid of the stock market. I'd heard a lot of horror stories about people losing money and the stock market crashing and the bear markets and bull markets, and I had no idea what all that meant. And so, can you just give us some of the basics of what the stock market is all about?
Sure. The stock market is a scary place for a lot of people, and I think that a lot of the media creating, they're really good at selling papers, right? So, they're really good at creating negativity around bad markets or euphoria around good markets. So you have to get a little bit more, like you said, into the nuts and bolts of what the market is to relieve some of that fear. And I think the easiest way to do that is just to go straight to what is a stock or what is a bond, and understanding what the basics are of the general market. In theory, all it is, a stock market, all it is a place for people to buy and sell ownership in large companies. That's all it is. And ownership in large companies sometimes goes up and it sometimes goes down. But generally speaking, in the United States, we've had an upward trend for a long, long time, 100 years or more. There's times when it's down. There's times when it's up really good, like right now. And then there's times in the middle, which are probably more often true, where it's just kind of doing its thing and be up a little bit.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So let's say someone, is just starting out and they want to invest in a stock. What would they even do to even begin the process of investing in a stock?
Yeah, so first thing, obviously, you got to figure out what a stock is, that one piece of ownership in that company. The second thing you'd want to do is go try to find, if you want to buy an individual company, you'd want to go find a company that you know something about. So go buy a company where you buy clothing from Under Armour or The Gap or some other location where you may buy clothing, or a grocery store chain because you shop there. Or maybe, any kind of a company. Go figure out where Tide is made and buy that owns it. For consumer products, you could do that and find out what company you like. Then you need to research that company. There's all kinds of ways to do that. You can order their documents if you want to get deep into researching them. You can go online to their investor services if they're a publicly traded company, and they'll have breakdowns of what their incomes are and expenses as a company and how much money they make. That's a deep dive in. Or if you want something that's a little bit more user-friendly, you can go somewhere to like Morningstar.com and find a rating scale for each company. So Morningstar has a rating scale. They're kind of the consumer reports of investing, if you will. So they have ratings on specific companies as well. However, I would say if you're just getting started, it's probably not the way I would do it or recommend somebody do it, buying an individual company, because if you only own one company, all of your money is dependent upon that specific company doing well. And if they don't, then you could lose quite a bit of your money. If they do, you could make a lot of money. So there's just more risk when you're only investing in one company.
Okay.
And that's where diversification comes. So my recommendation for someone just starting would be to look for some type of a mutual fund, because a mutual fund owns lots of different companies, and therefore it gets diversified across lots of different businesses. In case one of them doesn't do well, you're not at the mercy of that one company, because you've got some diversification.
Okay. So let me go back. Let's say, and Bobby, I got to tell you something. I've stopped drinking coffee. and I've been coffee free for about 2 weeks now. So give me some props on that. But let's
I
say,
have to wake you up in a minute.
no, I should be fine. But let's say, I drink coffee at Starbucks every day. And I decide, I want Starbucks to be at least one of those companies that I invest in. It sounds like what you're saying is invest in companies that you either utilize or that you sort of kind of understand what they do.
If you're going to pick individual companies, I definitely would do that. I would go somewhere that you use on a regular basis. So if it's Starbucks, then I would go to Starbucks and say, hey, I drink coffee here regularly. I've noticed a lot of people like that too. And so I would probably start to look at Starbucks business and just see, is Starbucks a successful company? And there's a lot of ways you could do that. Like I said, you could go to Morningstar and pull up Starbucks and start to look at a lot of the commentary around them. So there's lots of articles around how they're doing. You can look deeper into their corporate documents if you really want to get into it, where you actually go to their investor relations their website and go to investor relations, and you can look at their company filings. Mm-hmm. So exactly how much money they made last year, exactly how much money they spent last year. You can get deep into the company if you want to.
Okay. So we're going to talk about mutual funds in a second, but I just want to go back to the individual stocks, because I know people who have investments in individual stocks, and one of the things that they do, like you said, they invest in things they either use or they like. But like you said, there's a risk involved in that, because if you put too much money in that one stock, in that one company, and that company has some struggles, your portfolio is going to struggle. So I know diversification is important, but before we get into that, just looking at those symbols was always confusing for me. If I was at a hotel or something and they'd have on CNN or a news channel, you see all these letters and this ticker symbols and all this stuff that looked so confusing. But you'd always see like a price, like a share price for the stock. And so, talk about sort of how that because some people may say, well, I'm going to invest, that's only $5 a share, and so I'm going to get as much of that as I can. But talk about how that share price may or may not be the best indicator of how to value or pick a stock.
Sure. So first off, let's back up and say this is what a stock is. So a stock is one portion of ownership in a company. So if you take Starbucks back for an example again, Starbucks has, I don't know this to be true, but let's just say they have 8 million shares out there. Mm-hmm. So if you paid $25 and got one share, you would own 1/1,000,000th of the company Starbucks. And in an efficient market, in one that has everything correct, you would price that by looking at what is the value of Starbucks, the company, divided by the number of shares outstanding. And that would be the price that you get. Mm-hmm. So if it was 25 times 1 million shares, Starbucks is worth $25 million, in theory. Mm-hmm. The problem is the price moves up and down based on who's buying and selling that particular stock on any given day. Mm-hmm. And that can be influenced by emotion. And this is where investors' emotions comes in. So at a point like 2008, if you looked at what happened then when the market went down drastically in a short period of time, what happened was people got scared. And so they began to sell off their shares as the market was going down. And if you looked at the total value of the market, it was well below what it should have been at the bottom. So going back to my example again, that $25, if that's what the price should be, during times of fear, it may go down to 20 or 19, mm-hmm. well below what the company is truly worth. And that's usually due to emotion or fear. Or it may be way above that. It could be 28 or 29, where someone is really excited about a specific company and maybe too excited and has it valued at more than what it's truly worth. So stock price is not always the best indicator of the true value of a company. The best indicator of that would be to dig, like I said, deep into their corporate documents and try to understand how much money they're making. and why they're making money, and do they stand to continue to make that much money, or is this some sort of a fad that may go away? And that's where you have to start making some of those judgment calls on corporations.
Okay, that's
Does that
awesome.
make sense?
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's perfect. So just because the price goes down, that doesn't mean the company has lost value.
Doesn't mean that at all. That just
Okay.
means that it could mean that. If you believe in efficient markets, which you'll read a lot about out there if you start looking into investing, some people believe in truly efficient markets, then the price is always perfectly in line with the value of the company.
Mm-hmm.
I myself believe that there is significant emotion in investing. And so there are times where people get scared of a company and the value of the company is actually more than what the cost of the stock is, the price of the stock is.
Mm-hmm.
So going down does not necessarily mean that the company is failing. It doesn't necessarily mean that the company is not a good company.
Mm-hmm.
It could just simply mean that out of favor currently. And there's a whole group of investors out there called value investors that's all they do. They look for companies where the stock price does not truly reflect the value of the company. Warren Buffett is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
He's really the most well-known value investor today.
Mm-hmm.
His teacher was the very most well-known, and his name was Benjamin Graham.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay. Now that clears it up. That's very, very clear a way of explaining that. So like you were saying before, if a person really wants to get started in investing, it's probably a really good idea to start with mutual funds. So let's talk more about mutual funds and investing in those particular types of funds.
Sure. So picking individual companies for someone that's never done this before is scary because there's so much information about these individual companies, and it's hard to understand those if you don't have a finance degree. And when you start looking at their corporate documents, I mean, some of these companies make $1 billion a year, and that's a lot of zeros to start to try and absorb into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And understand how their businesses work. So my thoughts for someone getting started would be to use a mutual fund. And the easiest definition I've ever had of a mutual fund, I'll give it to you. It's actually Dave Ramsey's definition, is take a bucket and put it into the middle of a table. And each person put $100 into the bucket. And now we have, quote, mutually funded that bucket. So we have a bunch of $100 in there. Then you take your bucket and you find an investor to invest that money for you. And now you have a mutual fund. So maybe I only put $100 into that mutual funded bucket, but the bucket has $100 million in it because there's a lot of us that put money in there. And now we can go out and we can buy hundreds of companies, stock, and spread our risk over hundreds of different companies. And that is how a mutual fund works. I only own one small fraction of that bucket, but the bucket owns hundreds of different companies because lots of people are involved in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very clear.
Sense?
Oh, that's very clear. Yeah, that's very, very clear. And so let's say after hearing that definition, some of the listeners say, Bobby, I want to go get in that bucket. Practically, how would they get started?
But what they need to do is they can do it on their own if they want to, or they can find a professional to help them. Either way.
Okay.
If they want to do it on their own, then they've got to open a brokerage account first, and that can be done in a lot of different locations. Ameritrade, E-Trade, Scottrade, those are all places where if you wanted to do it on your own, you could. Or you find someone like me that offers brokerage accounts, and you call that person and say, hey, I want to open a brokerage account. And they can help you with that. It's a matter of choosing the right mutual fund. And that gets a little bit more complicated. And this is another place I find people get scared. So let me take that definition one step further because I think it'll help listeners.
Okay.
Is they have these really long titles, like the J.P. Morgan Large Cap Growth Fund or the Federated Strategic Value Dividend Fund.
Right.
And they seem really complicated, but they're not. for the most part, when you understand it. Anytime you see the title on a mutual fund, it tells you, most of the time, it tells you what it does. So take that first one, for example, the J.P. Morgan Large Cap Growth Fund. Well, if you read that, J.P. Morgan is the investor. Remember I told you we take our bucket and we go out and we find an investor to invest the money for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, J.P. Morgan is the investor. Large cap is the section of the market that we're using. Large cap companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. So think Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Johnson & Johnson, really large businesses. So large cap growth fund means they're actually investing in companies that they think are going to grow. Google is a big one right now in large cap investing. It's a company that they believe is going to significantly grow. So that's how you read that. J.P. Morgan's the investor. Large cap is the stocks that it's buying. Growth fund means they're buying growth companies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to the second one real quickly. Federated Strategic Value Dividend Fund. Sounds really hard, but what it is, Federated is the investor. Strategic Value Dividend. What I know is, it doesn't say large cap, but it is. It's a large cap value fund. And dividend means it invests directly in dividend-paying stocks, which is a whole other conversation maybe for another time. But it's a large cap value fund that invests in dividend companies. It's the same thing, big companies that are probably undervalued. Stock price is undervalued based on the value of the business. So it's just a different way of doing it.
Okay.
So listeners can look at these and they can get a really good idea of what these mutual funds are doing if they just read, like I was saying, step by step through the definitions, through the titles of these mutual funds.
Okay. And so, let's say even though you explained that very well, let's say I say, you know what, I do not want to do it myself. I want to bring in an expert like yourself to do that. What would you say are some of the advantages of actually hiring someone to help you with the investing?
The largest advantage is they have the knowledge to, hopefully they will educate you. They have the knowledge to educate you on what all of these different categories are. It's probably one of the biggest ones. The other one is they know how to help you with your own emotions when the market is going up and down very quickly. That's probably even a bigger advantage, is they can keep you from selling at the wrong time and hopefully keep you from buying at the wrong time as well, to try and keep you from losing monies and or investing at the wrong times.
Okay.
And they can build you a diversified portfolio of different mutual funds because there's more to it than just buying one. The people I work with would own maybe 10 or 15 different funds in a good portfolio. So it's a matter of being able to kind of lay those over each other and make sure you have a diversified portfolio, even of mutual funds.
Okay. So as we're starting to wrap up, I do have two more final questions. And this one is, so if a person decides they want to hire a financial advisor, can you give us maybe the top three or four things that they need to maybe even ask them or interview them on before they make that choice?
Sure. I think the first thing is it's going to be someone that you get along with. So you need to interview, I would say, a few people, just to make sure that when you sit down with that person, you feel comfortable with them, that you have similar ideals, just on a personal basis, not even including on the money side, but just on a personal basis, that you get along with each other. I think that you should feel empowered to ask questions, and you should be with someone that is wanting to educate you. I know too many times I've heard horror stories, people coming to me saying, my last person talked right over my head. They used all kinds of jargon, and I didn't know what they were talking about, and I didn't feel like I could tell them that I didn't know what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So we need someone that's going to foster education and understanding, and it doesn't just say this is the way it is and not involve you in the process. So it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to want to learn, and it's okay to not hire somebody if you don't feel like they're going to help you learn. So that would be first. I would say there's a personal relationship. Number two is what I was telling you about before, which is how do you want to work with someone? If really all you want is someone to help you with your investments, then maybe working with someone on the more of the product side is okay. If you know what you want to buy and you just want kind of a second opinion, then having them earn a commission rather than giving you distinct advice may be the perfect way to work with somebody. But if you're looking for someone that has a fiduciary relationship, one where they have to have your best interest at heart, then I would say someone more on the fee only or in the middle would be better for you. Certainly if you're going to do more than just investing and you want someone to get deeper into the other pieces of your financial life, I think that will be a good decision.
Okay.
And then three, it's just, you can't be too careful in the market today. So just understand who this person works with. Do they work with a large company like a Merrill Lynch or a Smith Barney or a UBS or somebody like that? Do they work with a large company like a Prudential or Transamerica or even Commonwealth, who I'm with, larger companies, to know that they have someone that's watching how they're doing business so that they will continue to do it properly. There's just there can be a lot of fraud out there. You just want to be careful of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so, last thing I always do on the show when we're ending the show is I like to give you an opportunity to leave listeners with maybe one or two of your top takeaways.
I started off just probably like everybody else, focused on the money. It was focused on how do I make more, how do I make more. And I think the biggest thing I've learned in my life is that money shouldn't be the driver. It's happiness that should be the driver. And really it's joy. And we can find joy in anything in life. We don't have to have lots of money to find joy. I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned, and it's a hard one to learn, that money doesn't bring joy. It's your attitude that brings joy. And so I found that in really serving others and educating others and prioritizing my life where my family comes first. So I think that's what I would leave people with, is find joy. Find joy.
All right. Hey, you heard it, Bobby Jones. Find joy. Mr. Jones, we love that your values and your family and how you made decisions based on your family, and thank you for leaving us with that. And thank you for joining us on the show today. If listeners want to ask more questions, or if they have more they want to learn and know, how can they get in contact with you after the show?
They can contact me. They can look up my website at www.edwinyeates.com. That's EDWINYEATES.com. And then certainly they could email me at bobby@edwinyeates.com.
That's awesome. So once again, thank you for being on the show today, Bobby. And to all you listeners out there, you heard the top takeaways, and we hope that you will reach out to Mr. Jones. And if you have any other questions or information about what we're doing on our podcast, you can always find us at www.INvest.U.com. And any information that we talk about on the show will be on the website as well. And I want you to always remember as we leave to love God, love people, and don't forget about you. Until next time.